And I'm going to tap up and across. And if you'd like, make a little sound with me today. Maybe hearing the sound bounce a little bit. And let's continue tapping everywhere where we have ribs. So front, back, and side. Almost as if we're tapping is kind of like we're filling in a paint by number. So if there's an area of the rib cage that doesn't feel like it's been touched yet, it doesn't feel like it's been colored in yet, tap there a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and bring in some just sort of like opening movement. Almost kind of feels like a cat yawning in the sunshine after a nap, right? Just a little bit of stretch as we tap. Maybe lifting the arms or twisting the spine a little bit. Maybe a little curving forward or back, side to side. Good. Let's tap the back of the neck there for a moment and gently come around towards the jaw. Maybe the jaw opens a little bit as you tap. Good. Let's finish that all the way up to the crown of the head, tapping in the very, very top. Maybe a little raindrop over the face, soft down the front of the neck, brushing down, 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 down the trunk. Good. Let's continue down the legs. So a nice tap. And if you need to modify by sitting down for this, you absolutely can. And I'm just going to tap the muscles all the way down towards my right foot. I'm going to stay on the same leg there for a moment. I'm going to tap ankle, top of the foot. I'm even going to shift so that I can tap the bottom of my foot. And again, as if the body is a big paint by number chart, is there any area in this right leg that doesn't feel like it got a little proprioceptive wake up call? Tapping there more than. All the way up to the hip. And let's add a little demi-plie and we'll tap over our glutes inside that demi-plie. Take the feet a little wider, still only on the right side. Go ahead and take that into a little baby squat this morning. Getting a little deeper, tapping over the glutes. And I'm going to tap over my hip flexor in the front, my side of my pelvis there, getting into the glute medius, glute minimus, TFL, maybe a little sway. Let's let that go for a moment. And just a little check-in. Is there a difference in the way you sense the right leg after tapping than the left leg? Yeah, my volunteers, my panelists are nodding their head yes for me, yes, and thumbs up. So interesting. We're going to use this tool, and we use it a lot in Franklin Method, which is increased proprioception. Because when our brain and body are communicating better, we usually see better function in the body. Let's go ahead right away to the other side. So a nice tap. And it's totally up to you. I'm using soft fists here to tap. It's totally up to you how much pressure you want to use. You could do a very light tap. You could do a more rigorous, quick tap. It's sort of listening to see what the body might need. And again, same on the other side, making sure I get a moment to tap the bottom of my foot, my arch, my heel. And then I'm going to work my way back on up. If there's any areas that feel like it needs a little more attention, go ahead and hit that on the way back up. And then I'm going to get up to my pelvis, take a little demi-plie as I'm tapping over the big muscle, big glute max there. And then I'm taking the feet just a little wider into a little baby squat. And I'm going to go ahead and tap over the glutes, the high fibers and the low fibers if you can. And then we're going to take a little tap on the side pelvis as we sway our hips or create a nice figure eight. And then a little tap onto the front of the hip crease there. A little low belly tap, a little top of the thigh tap. Let's shake that out. And again, just take a quick little body scan. Do the legs feel a little bit more even in the way we can sense them? Right. So let's do a little exploring of the feet while we're just in this observation mode. After tapping our trunk and our legs, imagine that stamp pad at the bottom of the feet again and notice if anything has changed. It could be a really small change. That's fine. In fact, sometimes the small changes, those are the things that really matter. So I'll share with you that on my left foot, I felt a little bit more on my big toe side of my foot than on the pinky toe side on the left. I haven't really done anything to change that other than wake my body up a little bit, right? So by activating our proprioceptor, something has changed and my foot feels a little more even on the floor. Anybody get a change in their feet after just doing a little proprioceptive wake up? Yeah. This is why we always start a Frankel Method class with a nice little warm up, right? Because just getting that brain body connection sometimes is enough to already have our body be reinformed about how it's dealing with the forces, right? We're always dealing with gravity pulling us down, ground reaction force pushing us up, and of course, our muscular force, our habits, how we move in the world, what techniques we're practicing. So let's take a little investigation of the foot. Let's bring, you can do this on the floor. I'm just going to bring my foot up to this stool so you can see it a little bit better. And I'm just going to do a little lean. So I'm going to load my foot and I'm going to watch my toes. So I'm going to go from a place where my foot doesn't have much weight on it. And then I'm going to lunge into it and notice what happens. So first question is, are we seeing that there are changes in the foot when it gets loaded? Yeah. If you have a sock on, you might even see that the spread of the toes is happening a little bit. For me, I don't have socks on. I see the knuckles in my toes. They like release. My toes almost seem like they get a little longer. Yeah, Mika is kind of making this shape with the hand. Yeah, some spreading out there. Yeah, yeah. Good. Gonna get a little wider, a little looser, and wow, a lot of ability for movement. Okay. Let's keep that in mind as we're looking at our own foot. I'm going to switch chairs so that you can see my foot. Great. Let's do our right foot first. Do our right foot first. So we're going to take the model, right? So that the heel is facing my left. My big toe is up on top. How might we untwist the spiral in the foot a little bit? Okay. If we want to untwist the model a little bit, the heel side is going to go down and the big toe side is going to go in opposition of that, right? So I'm going to take my left hand on my right heel and my right hand on my big toe there. And if I sort of unspiral the foot a little bit, just notice what that feels like in the foot and ankle. And now let's do the opposite, right? I'm going to take my heel up towards the sky and my big toe down and notice what that feels like in your foot. Yeah. So if I take big toe up, heel down and move it around a little bit, and I take big toe down, heel up and move it around a little bit. Anyone notice when we take that big toe down, heel up, that's the winding of the spiral, that you get a little more rigidity in there? Anyone feeling that at home? Yeah. Cool. Let's continue working on this spiral. So I'm not pushing the bones or the joints. I'm not moving into discomfort. I'm really giving like a gentle little twist, right? Just like I was wringing my sponge a little earlier, right? So a soft feeling of kind of twisting the foot and untwisting, twisting the foot, untwisting, letting it get used to the range of motion. Okay. So let's pause one more time. Let's take that big toe down, heel up. And we notice that the foot gets a little more rigid. And does anyone notice that it moves a little bit more towards plantar flexion, or in dance world, we might say pointing? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then if we move towards the wider, more mobile version, anyone notice that moves a little bit more towards dorsiflexion or flexing the foot? Yeah. So these things are going to be connected, right? And we want a foot that's very adaptable, that can go from more rigid movement. Think about that. When would you want a rigid foot? When we're taking off from a jump, maybe. When we're trying to really push through space, right? When we want to reach up into releve, right? When would we want a more adaptable wide foot? Landing from a jump, right? Nice big undercurve, right? Taking someone else's weight. I do a lot of contemporary partnering. When I take on my body weight plus someone else's, I really need the foot to understand that it has to take all that weight and send it into the floor, right? But even just as simple as walking, right, is going to need this foot to be that adaptable. So, yeah, it's really important for us as dancers, but even just walking through the space, no matter what kind of practices you do with your body, right, we're going to need this foot to go back and forth. In Franklin Method, we call this two different modes, right? We call it lever mode and we call it foundation mode. Okay. Good, good, good. So let's just see what that feels like after doing a little spiral. Go ahead and stand up and just let's notice the foot there for a moment. Yeah, really paying attention to the foot that I just touched. So for me, that was my right foot. And now let's go ahead and bend the knees and let's think about what we just learned. Could you imagine the foot getting wide and mobile underneath you as you take a little plie and then come back up? So anyone noticing that that gave them more range of motion on the right foot there? Yeah, for me too. Wow, that's what the doctor ordered. For me, that's quite profound today. Yeah, that gave me a much more elasticity, a little bit deeper of a load. My heel, I'm noticing my heel feels a little more released, like it has room to move back in space as I go down. Yeah. On my left foot, it's not as clear, right? It's not as clear. I can kind of force it. I can kind of force the range of motion, but it doesn't feel as nice and gooey and nice and elastic. So I bring this up because often, if we just do the fix it, right? Let me just like push my body into this shape, but let me add this kind of form on top of it. What we really do is add a lot of effort on top of it. So what we're trying to do is align the image that we have in our head about our dancing with the functional anatomy, right? And when our imagery and the design are more aligned, we often really feel quite a difference in our range of motion, our balance, the power in the foot. So let's go ahead and do this foot massage on the other side. So we're going to take the heel up and the big toe down, and then the heel down, the big toe up. We're going to start opening up the spiral. All right. And again, we don't have to push into a range that is uncomfortable. And if you're feeling a lot of discomfort in the foot, maybe something to do is add a little bit of imagery. What if you were to imagine the foot being malleable like Play-Doh? Does that help get the foot starting to spiral? What if you were to imagine the joints in the foot being really elastic? Or maybe since we used a sponge earlier today, your foot is a big sponge. And when you wind the spiral, it squeezes all the water out. And when we open the spiral, we let fresh water in, almost like we're sponging the foot here. Yeah. And then the next time you take a winded, when we're kind of making that foot a little more rigid, as you make that twist happen, just notice how that kind of puts the foot in towards a little bit more plantar flexion or pointing of the foot. We give it a little wiggle when we're twisted up like this. You might notice much more stability in the foot. And then open the spiral. Notice how the foot moves a little bit more into flexion. Give that nice little wiggle. I have a lot more range, right? When the foot is opened up here. Well, a lot more soft for me. Okay, that's probably enough. So come on up. And we're going to do that same thing, just kind of noticing what the second foot feels like now. And then go ahead and take a demi-plie. We're still working in parallel. Oh, that changed the sensation in my left foot. Yeah, seeing some thumbs up from folks on my screen. Thank you so much. Yeah, so let's use a little imagery here. I grew up out in the country, right? And so maybe we imagine we're like in the field after the rain and we plie and we're kind of squishing the foot down into the mud, letting the toes spread, letting the heels widen underneath us. And then as we straighten the legs, we just pull the arches right back up out of the mud. So spreading the feet, wide foundation mode. And then as we straighten the legs, pulling the arches right up out of the mud. Spread and sink and pull back up out. And one more time, spread and sink and pull back up and out. So what I've noticed in my own taking dance class and in hearing my students have different goals as well, we have a big question for a lot of us studying Western dance techniques that we're worried about pronating. And many of us have probably heard that at home, right? So pronating, we normally say, oh, you're a pronator or you're stuck pronated when the ankles sort of drop in towards the inside. So if it's okay on your feet to just kind of play around with this a little bit, let's see what happens if we just let the big toe side of the foot be a little more weighted, right? And almost like it's, even though we're standing, it's like already sinking into the mud. And just notice how that feels on the sides of the ankle. Anyone feeling like you can get like a little bit of flare there. Pinky toes are loose, not so connected to the floor, right? This would probably be more of our foot that's kind of stuck in pronation mode, right? So as we go down, the foot absolutely needs to spread and widen. The problem would be is if it stayed there when we straightened our legs, right? So now we didn't get that adaptable foot. We got a foot that's in foundation mode. Then we straighten our legs and it stayed in foundation mode. It's not moving in between positions. Yeah. So often what I hear is lift your arches as a way to fix that. So today we're going to really explore that cue. Lift your arches. So if I were to lift my arches, and if you want to practice that at home, maybe increase the dome a little bit, take the weight off the midfoot, lift the arches up, and now go ahead and demi-plie and notice what that feels like. So for me, I'll describe that as I can do it. I can lift my arches and bend my knees. Not as much as if I let my foot move into foundation mode. Not as much as if I get that foot to spread and widen, right? So what happens is as I do that, I feel more weight now on the pinky toe side of my foot. The front of my ankle feels a little congested, and I get a little feedback in the front of my knee. It's kind of like almost my knees are a little congested too. Yeah. So anytime we take on a cue that creates more tension in the body, I think we should be critical of it. What's going on there, right? So something that needs to happen, right, is that doming back up, right? That doming back up. So if we have kind of like a half inflated ball here, something with a dome, and I'm going to load, right? I press the dome. Oh, the dome gets wider and wow, it's really bulging out in all directions here. It's spreading out. And then when I take my hands back away, oh, the dome comes back, right? There's elastic recoil in that arch. So we get this spreading and widening, and then we get this doming back up. Yeah. So let's just take a moment and use our hands as a little model here. Could we imagine the arch is spreading, toes getting wider and more forward, heels dropping down and spreading back. And then as we straighten the legs, whoop, letting the dome recover. So we're going to go down like we're pressing on the big ball. The toes go forward and wide. The heels drop back and whoop, we get a nice little recoil on the way back up. Let's do that one more time. So a spreading foot and a doming foot, a spreading foot and a doming foot. We're getting there. We're getting closer. Yes. So now let's see if we could take this into our first position. And I think let me move my chair here. This is often a place where if we get the turnout coming more from the ankles or knees, we may automatically feel that arch falling in, right? So instead, let's go to that place where we might be able to visualize the ball of the big toe, the ball of the pinky toe in the center of the heel, equal on the floor for a moment. So, when you in sort of just body scan like we did in parallel, how do you feel your feet making that stamp on the ground? Is it the same from right to left? Do the heels have more weight than the balls of the feet or vice versa? So many of us that have really trained in ballet may find that as soon as you go to first position, you tend to take the weight off the heels and put it into the ball of the toe. For today's practice, I'm going to ask us that we try to find an equal foot where the ball of the foot and the heel have the same amount of weight on it there for a moment. And let's just practice this foundation mode in demi-plie. So could you imagine the foot spreading out, the toes spreading like a beautiful fan widening on either side, and then recoiling underneath. Plie, wide foot spreading, heels away from toes, toes spreading out side to side, and then the arches doming back up. Yeah, I'm doing it with my hands. It kind of helps me learn it. If you want to do that with your hands at home, you can. So we're going to go wide spreading foot, doming foot. Wide spreading foot, doming foot. Wide spreading foot, doming foot. So what's happening is we took our foot model, right, that had all these 33 true joints, right? And we said, wait, but we have over 100 tendons, ligaments, and muscles that connect these bones and help them with all their changes. So what we're starting to do is find a model of a foot that has a more tensile structure, where the weight of our body, when it loads, it spreads and shears, those bones move. And then when we take the load away, we get this nice dome, this recoil, right? So a tensegrity system is a structure, right, that has elastic recoil. It could be sheared, it could be pressed, it could be distorted from its original form for a moment. But when the weight goes away, it has the ability to recover. So something in our training is like, do we have the ability to recover nicely in the foot? Do we get that nice elastic recoil? Right? Every demi-plie is a chance to practice, right? Yeah. So let's just think about that. Let's take it again. Oh, let me change my camera. Let's just take it into another shape, right? And this could be, I'm just going to do a little undercurve and I'm going to take it through a little bit of external rotation. So I'm going to take a nice big weight shift. And right here, I'm going to think wide spread foot. But now I'm going to add that image of the toy. So I'm going to focus on my right foot. Right now, my foot, like a tensegrity toy, right, is getting stretched. And as I shift my weight onto one leg, I'm going to imagine that bouncing back, that nice poppy recoil back up. So we're going to go spread and recoil. See what it feels like in the foot to really let the bones move, let the ligaments and tendons sort of store a little potential energy. And then that doming brings us up to one foot. If you feel ready, you can always bring that foot up off the floor. Maybe even it comes up in the air a little bit. What does that feel like? Good. So let's go back to that old cue we were sort of thinking critically on today, lift the arches. So let's spread into our second position and think lift the arch. And notice what that feels like in your weight shift. And come to one demi point. And keep your fingers right on the back of my legs is what I would say, right? I'm always getting my students to try to feel the power from the back of the leg, integrate their pelvic floor into a plie, right? And spreading the feet is really going to help with that. Anyone feel like a little more difference or lightness in the pelvis when the feet spread in second position? Yeah. Good, good, good. Maybe a couple more of these just to kind of feel what that feels like. Yeah. Cool. All right. So let me check my time. Okay, great. So we got to get to releve. We got to get to the other side of the puzzle. All right. We're going to take just a look at the back of the heel. So there's a better way to do this in the camera. Maybe like that. Okay. So I'm just putting my fingers on the back of my heel here. Yeah, I think you can see that at home. And as I come up to demi point, I notice, my heel isn't in the exact same place as it was. Anyone noticing that? When you come up, the heel isn't in the same place. Anyone notice that as they come up to demi point, the heel kind of moves medially a little bit or towards the midline of the body? Yeah. That's exciting. It's exciting for me. What's exciting for you? I'm like, wow, okay. Well, that's going to change things, right? Because we said earlier that when we wind the foot up a little bit, it's going to get a little more rigid, right? When we wind the foot up, it's going to get a little more rigid. So that means as I go into my releve, my heel isn't going to come straight up the back over the ball of the foot, but instead there's going to be a spiraling of this foot, right? There's going to be a twisting of this foot. Let's see from another angle. There's going to be a twisting of the foot. Twisting of the foot. I think this is the best angle for the model to see that winding up and unwinding. Yeah. Thanks, Carla. Like, yeah, you can see it, right? So how exciting. Okay. That means in my releve, I'm also going to have this lovely dynamic shift in the foot. To get more stability means I'm going to have to embody how the foot winds, right? So I'm going to put, this is my right foot. I'm going to put my right hand on top of my arch here, over my first ray, over my big toe. And I'm going to put my left hand, I'm going to bring that onto the back of my calcaneus. So as I go up into demi-point here, I'm going to see if I can start to feel a spiral where my heel comes forward, but I'm going to wind around my first ray, creating a twist. Because if the whole foot went with the heel, I would get a foot that kind of, kind of sickles out. We say dancing often or goes over the pinky toe side of the foot. And this is often like the danger zone while we're dancing, right? So this is interesting. I think it might help not only with our stability, but I think it might also help with our balance. Yeah. So we're going to wind my right fingers under as my heel comes towards my fingers, making a nice twist and untwist. So we're going to go twist the foot, untwist, twist the foot, untwist, twist into releve, untwist, twist into releve, untwist. Yeah. Let's bring this. If you have something to hold on to, a chair or something like that, feel free. Let's stay focused on the right foot there. So as we rise, could we feel the big toe winding back and the heel or the hind foot winding forward on that right foot? And that's a nice releve there. I got a thumbs up. Who is that? Susan? Yeah. So big toe. Yeah, great. That's exciting. Big toe side of the foot winding back, heel foot winding forward. And on the foot I touched, and I've thought about it, I can really feel quite stable there on my right foot in my releve. Yeah. Is that Sarah's even practicing on one foot? Good for you. Awesome. Yeah, go for it. Let's quickly do the other side just so we can feel both feet in releve. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to have my left hand on, yeah, that looks good. Okay. My left hand on my first ray, my big toe, and my right hand on my heel. And I'm going to find this twist and untwist. Twist and untwist. Twist and untwist. Twist and untwist. Yeah, I'm seeing something pop up in the chat there. Can you show the heel raise from the front view? On the model, it would be like this. And then, yes, with my foot in the camera, it would be like this. Wind up, unwind. Wind up, unwind. Wind up, unwind. Wind up, unwind. Heel goes forward and towards the midline. Heel goes away. Heel goes forward and towards the midline. Heel goes away. Now the whole foot doesn't do that. There's a twist, right? And in a more advanced class, we could talk about the transverse tarsal joint. We could talk about the subtalar joint. We could go into details about how this is possible. But I think just to begin is to notice, okay, there are two modes in the foot. And to get that rigid lever mode, I'm going to have to create a spiral. Like taking a chain and twisting it, how it becomes so taut, right? Good. Let's try that with our feet on the floor. And I'm going to take it in parallel. So if I'm thinking about my heels are going forward and towards the midline. and coming back down. But the whole foot isn't being driven by that. Whoa, that would be really unstable for me. So I'm going to embody that spiral. The big toe is going to wind back and the heel's going to go forward. I'm going to get that nice twist. Let me use my sponge while we're together. Yeah. So we get something like winding up, unwinding, winding up, unwinding, winding up, unwinding, winding up, unwinding. So we could go, whoa, windshield wiper, plie, corkscrew releve, windshield wiper, plie, dome it up, and then corkscrew, nice big twist in the releve. Let's try that in first position. So the ball of the big toe, ball of the pinky toe, center of the heel, go ahead and let the foot spread, almost opening like windshield wipers opening on the dashboard. Coming back, doming the arches, and then heel is going to go towards the midline. Big toe, first ray is going to start spiraling back. Isn't that quite nice? And coming back down. Yeah. So when I notice that spot sort of be engaged, something interesting happens. My adductors feel active. They feel turned on. Yeah, some of you are noticing that at home too. So often we're trying to get our students we've been told by our teachers, oh, in our first position, we have to really engage the inner thighs. And often what I find students do is gripping. But all the way from the bottom of the foot, if we can get the dynamics of that releve going, that twist of the foot, it's going to impact the whole body, right? That impact is going to change the way that the adductors can be supported and the external rotators can feel supported. It may even change the way our sacrum is balanced inside of our posture, right? Which is for another day. There's always more to do. But I think it's exciting to know that we have that option. Quickly, how do we train for this? If you have a TheraBand, let's grab that TheraBand. Okay. Running a little bit, running a little behind schedule. So I will introduce the work with the resistance band. And I'll just say, when you're watching your replay, pause and go ahead and do reps that feel good to you. All right. So you can increase the amount of reps. Today, I'm just going to introduce a couple things to save time. And then you can practice these on your own. And I normally do sets of 10 and repeat that. But you never want to go past your threshold. In Franklin Method, we often use the principles of progressive overload for our conditioning. And there's a lot of information on that in Eric's book, Conditioning for Dance. Highly recommend the newest edition, has really great photos and tons of exercises like we're going to do today. So what we're going to do is go through that wide foot foundation mode to the rigid foot propulsion mode. And we're going to do that by taking the TheraBand. I brought it down underneath my sitting bone on one side. I'm running it down my leg, over my heel, up my toes, and I'm holding it in my hand here. So what I'm going to do without the band is pointing my foot here. Oh, let me rotate so you can see better. Great. So pointing my foot here, I'm then going to flex my ankle, knee, and hip at the same time, like we're getting a little plie. That's going to allow me to imagine this foundation mode, fanning mode happening in the foot. Then I'm going to go hip and knee and ankle and foot. And I'm going to think of that wrapping and winding up as I point against the resistance band. All right, so let's try a couple like this. So we're going to go foundation, propulsion, foundation, propulsion, wide foot, twisted foot, wide foot, twisted foot, wide foot, twisted foot. Yeah? And then let's pause at our plie. Let's really just activate those arch. Remember that image of like being in the mud and then pulling the arches up out of the mud? So we're going to practice that with a little bit of resistance. I'm just going to pull the toes down, right? If I demo this without the band, what I'm doing is I'm curling my toes down, but I'm not actually changing at my ankle joint, right? So I'm activating my plantar fascia and so many ligaments and tendons and muscles in the bottom of the foot, right? And that's going to help me condition that doming the arch back up. So the way I do this with the resistance band is to go quick down, slow motion up, quick down, slow motion up. And you notice I'm moving with my toes a little bit, right? So the reason we use the band in this direction instead of across the foot, like perpendicular, is so that I can move my resistance to always trying to be 90 degrees to the point of action, right? So I won't pull back here. That's just going to compress my toes. Instead, I'm going to let my toes pull that band down. You feel the difference if you lift it here and use the toes to pull the band. That really gives me a little workout. Let's let that go. Yeah. Maybe just flexing both feet after doing that. I notice a little increase in range there for me. And then let's roll through the feet and come to a point. And that feels, I feel the arch very, very active here. Yeah. Kind of like the shape of that one as well. That's nice. Great. So, because of time, I'm going to ask you to do that other side on your own. You know what the two activities for the TheraBands are today, with activating the arches. Let's see what that feels like to do just a little bit of ball work to wrap up today. So I have my Franklin balls. I'm just using the orange smooth ball. The red bumpy ones would be great. The green ones with the little circles would be great. And I'm going to start with just a nice massage, toe ball heel across the ball. If you don't have Franklin balls at home, you could try a tennis ball. Just be careful. They're much less flexible, right? But you could probably push lightly on it. If you're feeling pain, don't do it. The Franklin balls are designed to be really elastic. And so what we're hoping to do is get that feedback, that increased proprioception. We're trying to increase the amount of fluid exchange without triggering that pain response where we might be getting some of our stress hormones pumping while we're trying to release, right? So, so we're going toe ball heel on the ball there. And then let's do a little bit of supination. Let's take the pinky toe side down on the ball there. And let's do a little pronation. Let's do the big toe side down on the ball. And for some of us, that's going to feel quite different in the sort of fascial arrangements at the bottom of our foot because our body grows to do what we do. So if we have a habit in there of standing on the outside of the foot, this may feel very normal. And the pronation might feel a little awkward, and vice versa if our habits are on the other end of the spectrum. So here we're just going to imagine all the different ways that the foot could get a little massage. And then let's put the heel on the floor and let's activate this twist that we were working on earlier. So we're going to go pinky toe towards the floor, big toe towards the floor. And we're going to, get a nice little spiral going on in the foot there. Twisting big toe towards the floor, twisting big pinky toe towards the floor. Good. Let's take that foot off the ball and just take a moment to stand. Interesting. Let's take a moment and balance on the foot that we just did the ball work and the band work on. Maybe even a little single leg plie. If you want to move to your external rotation and check that out as well. And then let's try the foot we haven't done. So I'm coming to parallel to balance. Again, it's not like I can't do it, but it feels very different. I feel a little more like muscles are being in control, where the other foot felt a little more at ease. And yeah, the plie is not as easygoing. Yeah, I guess that's the best word. Yeah, you could try an external rotation. Same thing there too, if you'd like. Great, let's do that ball rolling on the other side. So first, we're just going to get a nice massage, toe ball heel, toe ball heel. I'm going to tilt the foot a little bit more on the big toe side and then tilt it more on the pinky toe side. And when you're practicing at home after the webinar, if you're watching the playback or you're just writing this exercise down, you really can do this for quite a bit longer than we're doing today. I'm just kind of racing the clock here. So just want to introduce a couple ball practices that we could do with our foot. But of course, there's many more practices to come. And then let's go ahead and put the heel on the floor. And then we're going to practice that spiral, pinky toe to big toe, pinky toe to big toe, pinky toe to big toe, pinky toe to big toe. And again, not pushing into a range of motion that causes discomfort. No need for that. There's not a no pain, no gain situation, which I mentioned in my interview. But yeah, that was a big change for me. Because for me, often dance practices were supposed to hurt. That meant I was doing a good job. So to finish up with that idea in mind, let's check out what plie feels like. In fact, I'm going to go to second position. You just notice how the feet feel. Yeah. And I'm going to come back to first, same thing, there. And then let's come back to parallel, little body scan, top to bottom, just noticing what is different than our very first body scan. Take one more demi plie and let's go all the way to releve here. And again, plie and releve. Yeah. So interesting, my plie releve has much more ease in it right now. And yeah, that's what I was saying. When our imagery and our practices align with the design, we often feel a better range of motion, more increased balance, but also for me, which was important to learn that when it's correct, it actually feels good. Yeah. I used almost that whole hour for my practice, but I'm going to hang out for a question and answer. So there's some stuff going on in the chat and let me look at this Q&A box. No open questions, but I feel like maybe we've been using the chat instead. So let me just look through really quick. Oh, interesting. Okay, wow, things are really popping in. So to activate my heel spiral from first position, I have to let the heels actually separate, which is counter to some of the cues we get in technique. Yeah, that's interesting, right? So some of us have been taught like keep the heels together as we go up, but really, there's a rotation, there's a spiral happening in the calcaneus itself. Yeah, so if we adhere too much to some of our cues that are aesthetically driven rather than functionally driven, often we can be practice something that is a little bit counterintuitive to the way the body is designed. That's a really great observation, Brenda. When we dome the foot, are we simply relaxing the foot so that it rebounds from its spread out shape, or are we trying to activate and engage the muscles in the arch of the foot to actively lift the arch? Right. So it's more, it got spread, it domed up. It got spread, it domed up. That activation of pulling the arches up, similar to our TheraBand exercise, could be a conditioning model. But in the moment of class, in the moment of performance, in the middle of really executing the dance technique, the hope would be that the ligaments, tendons, and fascial support system in the foot have this ability to come back on its own. Now, the other thing I want to say, because I kind of fall into this category and I have a lot of colleagues who do too, is to say those of us that are a little hypermobile, and dance often calls us in with our extreme ranges of motion, right? Is to say it's possible that we may be hyperextending and practicing into a very wide end range, and this natural recoil becomes difficult, right? And that deformation of tendons and ligaments is possible from our training. So sometimes we need the conditioning, like the TheraBand exercise or the foot exercises from Horton, to condition. But the hope would be then when we go to dance that it's sort of re-embodied this recoil and it comes back on its own. So I'm not sure the word relaxed would always work for me. I think rebound would probably, the foot rebounds is probably a better vocabulary for me. That's a great question, Alina. Andrew Rodriguez asked any tips for bunions. And yes, friend, if you looked at my foot up close, you know that that's my world too. But for another day, another day. But similar to what we're doing here, how can we train the ligament and tendon around the toes and allow for that spread and recoil? It really, these principles can cover any of the joints in the foot, really any of the joints in the body. Lots of thank yous. Thank you to everybody who's still hanging out with me. Oh, okay. I wonder about cueing hyperextended legs. Huge. In fact, that was our main point of study in my one of my dance classes at Temple this year was to really try to integrate a somatic approach to understanding the center of the knee joint, and then trying to integrate that into our technique practice. You may notice that getting more dynamic in the foot itself, this is like step one. There's more advanced levels of this to go. Some of us, if that was already like, whoa, that feels really different in my feet, check in with your knees. Check in with your knees and notice, like, if I practice this wide dome wind up, how does the weight then fall through the knees? I notice, because I fall into the hyperextended knee category, that if my feet are dynamic, often my knees move closer towards center rather than backwards plie. Yeah. So we could also do a whole workshop on hyperextended knees. I hope to do one day for you all. But I think that's a really interesting observation, that working with the feet and ankles probably is going to change a little bit of the knee, probably going to change a little bit of hip joints and sacrum. Maybe you even feel it in relationship to the curves of your spine. I know I do. Yes, some of you are nodding. Yeah. I know a couple of you are advanced though. The talus under the tibia, when thinking of that, it helps the spiral feel more free rather than a twist. Yeah. That's another approach, is to go, can we feel the weight of I brought it out just in case we went there, right? But to kind of feel all the weight of our body minus our feet is balancing on the talus. And the talus is not flat, right? Look at that. It's like a big roller coaster, right? And so, yeah, we could take this from embodying the movement at the ankle joint, and that may also really change the way that the foot integrates those forces from our body into the floor and vice versa. That's what I said. These are a couple little things to start with, but there's so many more practices to enjoy, right? Okay. Elise is offering some springy feet. Yes, me too. I think that is the end of our time together today. If there are no other questions that I can help with. Yeah, Mika. So the foot is in our level 2 teacher training. And that's because so much of it is connected to the ligaments and tendons and muscles. And so to really understand the full dynamics of the skeletal approach of the foot, we have to get the tendon, fascia, and muscle in there. And that's why we save it for level 2. Yeah, you'll get there. It's been so lovely practicing with you. I hope this is an interesting little study. Excited to hear what comes out of it. So don't be shy. You can send Franklin Method a little note. Let us know how this worked for you, or you could find me on social media. My Instagram is Franklin Method for Dance. Again, I'm Shannon Murphy. Thank you so much for practicing with me, and I hope to see you again soon. Yay!
Recording stopped.
Yes, thank you. I'm seeing so many familiar names popping up, and all of you out there practicing, it's really good to know you're virtually connected once again. Take care, everybody. Hey there, Lisa and Rowan. Just thought I would check in. Anything you need from me post webinar?
Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much
Hey.
for the class. I think we still have attendees around, but no, I think we're done. I will close the room now.
Okay,
Thank
sounds good.
you.
Thanks for everything.
Yeah, we'll be in touch on Slack.
Okay, sounds good.